In this lesson, we'll learn how to make a pineapple candle. As you can see, the bottom of this candle is made in the form of a so-called basket. To make this candle, we need to use a simple straight base with 6 edges, a simple cutting knife, and a round knife for the top. You can choose any color pattern you like in the app, and pay attention that when you dip the candle, you have to dip 1/3 of the bottom part in a different color. So we don't dip the candle fully, but only a little bit less than a half. Now we can start cutting the candle. As always, we begin with cleaning the wick and cutting the bottom. Try to spend as little time as possible on doing that. In this case, you get more time to carve the candle until it gets cold. Try to cut in the direction opposite to yourself and check how flat the surface is by looking at the knife, as it is relatively flat itself. After some time of training, this will only take you 10 to 15 seconds to do. Check the shape, correct any mistakes if you made them, and see if the candle is okay, because it could have been deformed during the dipping. Check that the bottom is completely flat and the candle doesn't bend, and then start carving. The first element of the pineapple is the same as in the waterfall. It is a loop. It is also based in the lower part of the candle and is carved at about 1/3 of the height. If you aren't sure where to cut, make marks on the whole candle with the rear side of the knife. The marks should be really small, and then start carving the loops. Remember that they should have thin tips and thick roots. These elements are secondary and not the main ones for the pineapple pattern, so don't make them too big. Fix the petals well at the candle, as they will support the basket element. One by one, and make sure you press the petals really tight so that they don't bounce back and you don't have to do the same thing again. Check if all petals are equally thick, looking at the color pattern that shows up. Now we can begin carving the next element, which is the basket. The height of the next petal is bigger, so you should start at about the middle of the candle. These petals should be able to reach the adjoining edge. Cut up to the very root of the previous petal. Then bend it to the right and fix it in the groove between the candle and the petal on its edge. The next petal is cut in the same way and fixed in the groove of the next element. Again, it looks in the same direction, which is to the right. One by one, each element bends and covers the previous petal. When you make the last element, make sure that its tip is placed not on the groove, but between the two petals that are already there. All the petals should be really tight. They don't look plump or delicate, but that's totally fine, as they form a base for the basket, and the volume will be gained later on. The free space left on the candle can now be divided into 3 equal parts, because there are only 3 elements left to carve. As usual, carving will be done in rows. Make marks and then begin to carve the petal at the lowest one of them. Start carving 1 cm higher and stop 1 cm higher as well, making the tip thin and the root thick. Then bend the petal in the opposite direction, which is to the left. Carefully fix the tip in the curl made by the previous element. Don't press too tightly, because the petals stand on their place by themselves. If you feel that you carve pretty well, you can cut 2 or 3 elements at once and then bend them all together. This way you save the time spent on repeatedly taking the knife and putting it away. Make sure all elements are parallel to each other and correct if anything stands out. Then find the next mark, which should be right in the middle of the empty space left. Again, start cutting the next element 1 cm higher and stop 1 cm higher too. This time, change the side again and bend all petals of this row to the right. Hide the petal tips and the curls of the previous elements. Slightly guide their way, but don't press too tightly. You should always have control on the temperature of the candle and make sure that it doesn't get cold. When you feel it is getting cold, hurry up. If the layers split a little bit, which happens quite often at the bottom, smooth them up carefully. It's not difficult and won't damage the pattern while the candle is still warm. Now we're going to make the last row in the same way as before. Be very attentive about the quality of your cut, as it will stay visible and you won't be able to hide it. So if you do everything right and make the tips thin and the roots thick, then the cut will have the form of a triangle. The second and third rows were bent in a loose way, but the last row is bent a bit tighter, just like the first one. The basket should have a plump, round shape. Make sure that the petal tips don't fall in between the edges. They should be bent diagonally to the left. If the petal tip can't be fixed right and you feel some obstacle, then first get it out and smooth it, and then try fixing it again. Have a look at the whole candle, rotating it, and correct any mistakes that you see. Check everything. Now we should cut the top of the candle as usual. This dimple is made for the candle to burn more evenly. Straighten the wick, clean it, then place the round knife in the center and press it into the candle on 5 or 6 millimeters. Don't forget, you shouldn't press it too deeply because it will be difficult to get it out afterwards. That's it. The dimple is done, and all the colored layers were very easy to get out. Now the only step left is to varnish the candle. The carving process is over. Now let's discuss some important aspects. First of all, after you've finished forming the basket, have a look at how all petals lie. Since we haven't fixed the petal tips firmly to the candle, in the end we can correct any mistakes and gain the needed volume. To form a round shape of the basket, we fix the first row well, then loose the next rows a bit and make the last row tight again. In the end, you can correct it all. And of course, pay the most attention to the last petals. They are the main ones for us. They should have a triangle shape, and if you've cut everything correctly, you will see that. If the tips are thin and the roots are thick, you will get this triangle shape. If you still don't feel very confident with the knife and you can't regulate the depth of the cut well, work on it more and practice well. This candle is quite simple to make, but in the next videos we'll use it as a part of more complex patterns of 20 cm candles. And you can also use this pineapple pattern on candles of any size.